Everyone. Welcome. Today, Brandon is joining us for a very special discussion about the Menendez brothers and whether or not the jury in the second trial got it right and whether their sentencing was fair. What are your thoughts, Brandon?
Um, so I just finished watching Monsters on Netflix. It was the Hollywood portrayal of the whole situation, the whole case and trial and everything. And one thing I thought it was really well done. Um, Ryan Murphy, I love Ryan Murphy, and I love the way he did it. And as you pointed out, Ed, I think um, every episode was kind of a different um, viewpoint,
Yeah.
and I think that's one thing that really hit me. Like every episode, you well, starting in the beginning, you kind of you immediately think the kids, the boys, are complete monsters, really, and they're just spoiled, entitled rich kids, and they deserve whatever they get. But then it goes into the different perspectives and it shows, it focuses on Eric and how if he's to be believed, how he was treated by his father and the sexual abuse and everything growing up. And then you start to feel sorry for him. And that it really he Ryan Murphy does a really good job of creating empathy for each part of this. And of course, then there's Lyle, who still seems like this jerk, entitled, horrible person. But then one of the episodes, you see that he was also abused by his father and carried out that abuse on his brother. And he was very remorseful about that. And he was really sorry that he did that to his brother. And so then you kind of have some empathy for Lyle, which was a little bit surprising. And then there was the mother, of course. The one thing that I noticed about the show was no matter what perspective they took, I never did feel much empathy for the father. I think it was kind of universally agreed upon that he was not a great guy. He treated his family, his wife, and his kids horribly. He was just, I not even Hollywood could create a whole lot of empathy for him.
Jose was,
So if that's oh, go ahead.
even in real life, Jose was more ruthless than anything. I've read just accounts, one story after another about he was just nasty and mean, and he always did it under the guise of, well, that's just how business is done.
Yeah, I think you made some excellent points about Jose. Both of you did, and the Hollywood version was a lot smoother, Brandon, and he wasn't portrayed the monster because in a way he's as much a monster as the two boys are. The mother is much a monster, so it's sort of ironic that the title of the series is Monsters, and you go into it thinking, at least I did, oh, it's about these two boys that killed their parents. But as you go through it, as the story unfurls, you recognize that there's multiple monsters in this scenario. So,
Right.
Brandon, do you think if you had watched that and you had been on the jury, it would have changed your opinion, your vote? I know they couldn't do that. That would have been just highly ridiculous. But if you were on the jury and you saw the Monsters film and don't you think that the Monsters film really encouraged people on like TikTok and social media to rally for their side, for the brother's side? I mean, because that really is what happened. They kind of were languishing in jail for 30 years. And then Monsters came out, and then everybody started to change their opinion. Did that affect you as well?
What it really pointed out was not in only this case, but any case, you see how many different sides there are to the story and how you can really look at it through different lenses and you don't know everything that really happened. And that was really highlighted in this series. I don't think the goal of the show was to create empathy for the Menendez brothers, really. I think he did a really good job of showing those different perspectives and creating empathy for each side and kind of showing you don't know the whole story. When you look at a case, you don't know what happens behind the scenes. And I think it would have I don't know if it would have changed my mind or not because I'm pretty skeptical about everything. So I tend to go into things knowing that I don't know all the details. I don't know all the behind the scenes things. And so I kind of take that and think, okay, well, especially at the end in the movie in the series, one of the jurors was like, if this is true, if they are telling the truth, if there was all the sexual abuse and everything, I can't put these boys to death. I there's no I can't live with myself thinking if this really happened to them that I'm putting them to death.
Robin says, as someone who hasn't followed this too closely, is there any information on how they behaved in prison? Have they been ideal prisoners or violent inmates? For the most part, we've been told that they've been pretty good, that they've really turned their lives around. Um, there's not a whole lot of information about that, but prison records indicate um, that they've not really been in too much trouble.
Well, even beyond that,
That's one thing.
both of them married. And in one case, Eric is still married to the same woman that he's been married to for, I don't know, something like 25 years plus.
Yeah.
So, what were you going to say, Brandon? I'm sorry.
Oh no, that's all right. That's one thing I was discussing with a friend of mine last night. I think she looked at it and she said, "Oh, I don't know if the father abused them. Yeah, that's one thing. I don't know if they should be let out." And I said, "Well, for me, it would depend on if they're changed because Lyle, if you believe the Hollywood version, Lyle was a horrible person. He was just so selfish and just didn't care about anything. And, of course, they both went out and spent a lot of money right after they killed their parents and were partying and everything. And Lyle made up all these lies and was trying to get out of it. But then she said, then I told her I was talking about the mother being killed, and she said, "Oh, I didn't know they killed the mother too. I didn't know they shot both of them." And she's like, "Oh yeah, they should fry." You know, but I thought, well, I mean, if the mother was complicit in it, I don't. It's just so difficult. I don't know, and but yeah, taking into account how they are now, if if Lyle has changed from that spoiled, entitled, rich kid, and he's actually grown and become a different person, that would have to I would have to take that into account as far as letting them out. But then there's also, is he just faking it
I don't
like he
know if
was
it's
lying
possible to
before?
fake it.
Is
Yeah, in prison.
Yeah,
I think maybe, in his
yeah.
private life, he could have faked it, and may have done so. But you hit on a really good point. The problem is they're lumped together. The two brothers are lumped together, and this was the problem I had. I think I've talked to Ed about. The first trial, they were tried separately. And I think in that situation, Eric came across as, okay, I was in a bad situation. I probably didn't make the best choice, but maybe I was influenced by my older brother. And in fact, it seemed like Lyle was pulling the strings in that scenario. But then when they put him together, I think that they didn't really get a fair sentence because I don't think they looked at each individual. And I don't know what side I'm arguing on today, Ed. I lose track of whether I'm for or against, and usually I have very mixed emotions. But I think the second trial, that the punishment that they got, the sentences they got, I don't think it was fair. And I would have been really upset if they had gotten the death penalty. I don't think they deserve the death penalty.
No, I don't think they deserve the death penalty. I've come to this conclusion after researching it again this week for the piece Was It Fair? Um, that yeah, the verdict was fair. We know that they did it. There's no doubt about that. They've confessed. I don't think the sentencing was fair though. I think the judge had already determined that he wanted a conviction because OJ had just been acquitted. He and he really wanted to send a message. It was part of his reelection campaign. And so when he got the chance to sentence them, he didn't apply California law. He just said, I'm going to do what I want to do. Nothing else matters. And I think that's why we're seeing now some of these politicians saying, well, wait a minute, no, that's they should have been sentenced under the minor guidelines. They should have been given more of a chance. And as my aunt pointed out on Facebook, um, we understand trauma better now, and we understand what this sort of abuse that the boys experienced, um, what that leads to.
Yeah, I agree. What do you think, Brandon? Did you look into the sentencing that they received after the second trial, and what is your opinion? Fair or not fair?
I definitely don't feel that they deserve the death penalty because, like I said, if the allegations about the abuse were true, I just can't. I can't imagine. I don't know. I mean, yeah, they. No matter what happened to them, that doesn't give them an excuse to kill their parents. They were almost well. Lyle was an adult. Eric, I'm not sure how old Eric was when he was actually arrested, but they were basically adults, and they could have left. They could have escaped, run away, or whatever. But yeah, I agree that they definitely shouldn't have been lumped together because it seemed like they had two totally different personalities. Lyle, like I said, at least from what the portrayal was, he was just a jerk. He was horrible. But Eric, he confessed to the therapist because he was feeling so guilty about it, and so that shows that he was at least somewhat remorseful. And Lyle didn't show any of that. And so yeah, I think they should have been looked at individually, even though they committed this essentially the same crime. I think they should have been that should have been separated. And yeah, I think the political part of it getting involved that should never play a part, politics. And of course, OJ, the OJ Simpson trial happening around the same time, and him being acquitted, that didn't help them at all because you're seeing, okay, he was let off. Well, we can't let these guys off too. We're just, that's setting a kind of a precedent.
Absolutely. And I'm going to tell both of you something. They've been resentenced as of about a week ago. They were resentenced and they removed that without possibility of parole. And now because they were convicted when the crime was done when they were still juveniles, they should then even possibly be eligible for parole immediately. Although, from everything I've been researching, they say that the first time you go before the parole board, it's almost always a fail. So they're actually trying to extend the time before they go before the board so they can prepare their, their statements and everything. But, honestly, I would be fine with Eric getting out immediately. I would be fine with him coming to my house for dinner. I would trust him. I don't know that I would ever trust Lyle. And I think that's going to be a bugaboo because do you let one out and not the other? What do you guys think?
I don't think you can let one out without the other because, like you said, they're so lumped together at this point that it if one's let out, the other is going to have to be. And I think they're so dependent on one another that if Eric was let out, I don't think he could survive without Lyle.
He is married. He does have his own
I don't.
family. Go
Uh,
ahead.
Robin says maybe don't invite murderers over for dinner, Karen.
Okay. Or maybe I'll have them meet me at a fast food restaurant around the corner. What do you think? That probably is better.
Well, I think they should be looked at separately. Yeah. I think they should be looked at separately because, well, also they've been in separate prisons too, haven't they? Did they ever were they able to come together in the same prison?
Yeah, they were
Yes.
brought back to the same prison.
What, about 5 years
Oh,
ago or
okay.
7 years ago? But
Somewhere
for
around there, yeah.
Yeah, but for a very long time, they couldn't even communicate. They couldn't even send letters or make phone calls. So they said when they finally did get together, they're somewhere in Southern California. When they finally did get into the same prison, they're not in the same units or cell blocks, but they can see each other a couple times a day. But when they did get together, they said both of them just wept because they had missed each other so much, and that really touched my heart. I can only imagine to be separated from your sibling that you were close to, and for what, probably 25 years, right,
Yeah,
Ed?
something like that, yeah. I think with them, I think the codependency kind of also falls to the abuse because Eric really relied on Lyle to protect him, and I think with Lyle, the Sam would be better at this because she actually, I think, didn't she write her perspective piece from Lyle's point of view?
Yeah.
So she was inside his head, but I feel like there was so much pressure put on him by Kitty and Jose that when he snapped, he just snapped, and I'm not sure that you can come back from something like that.
Maybe not, especially if you've been in prison for what, it's 35 years now. They have been in prison for, they have, their parents were younger than they are now when they were murdered, and they're still in prison. So I don't know.
Well,
They
the other
went
thing
in
about
young.
the codependency, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go
Well,
ahead. No, no, no.
sometimes there's kind of a delay, so
Yeah.
I hate
No, no, no.
interrupting people, but
No, no, no. You're great. Go ahead.
um, like as far as the codependency thing, they have spent most of their prison sentence apart, so I think it would be fine. I think Eric would be okay getting out without Lyle or them being separated because they have been separated for so long. Now, going out into public after being in prison for so long, that's another thing that I'm sure any of them would have to adjust to. But him having, like you said, him having a wife and a family already out there, I think he would be fine. And I think they should be separate. I know they are lumped together, but I don't think that's fair as far as, especially looking at how they've changed from when the murders occurred and now. If Eric has grown more and become more remorseful, that would be one thing. If Lyle hadn't changed at all, well, he shouldn't get out with Eric. You know, he he should, if he hadn't changed at all, he should stay in there. But I think you have to look at them individually because they are individual people.
I agree completely. And a good point to this, Brandon, is when I was 20, I was crazy wild. I mean, in fact, the person I am now, I would I would never invite me to dinner, Robin. I would never invite me to dinner when I was in my 20s or even my early 30s. It would have been dangerous. Now, of course, I would invite me because I would do all the cooking and cleaning. I mean, that's how much your life can change just over the course of 30 years. And another side point I want to mention, the actor who played Eric in Monsters is a huge fan of his. He has communicated with him and he is very supportive of him getting release. And he has said, he's a great guy. I'm so honored to know him. I have not heard that feedback from the actor who played Lyle. I have not. Maybe it's out there, but I just read yesterday that the actor who played Eric said he's so proud of him and that Eric told him, it would be great if I could get out and spend time with my family and my wife and, maybe live a lot, the whatever life I have left, because he's in his 50s. But he said, if they don't let me out, that's fine. I accept that. And I'm going to continue to do the good work I'm doing in prison, because he is doing a lot of good work in prison, helping to educate prisoners that can't read and doing artwork projects and things like that. So I think it's telling that the actor, who's really a cutie, by the way, the actor who played him is big rah rah on him, and the actor who played Lyle, not so much. So I don't know, you know, I mean, that's not everything. I just find that really interesting.
Well, along the same lines, Rosie O'Donnell is really a big Eric fan. Before I think
Oh,
she moved to.
I thought it was Lyle that she was
Is it Lyle?
friends with. I thought because I saw an interview with
Maybe it
her
is.
and she was talking.
Maybe it is Lyle. Maybe I got it confused.
Well, that's what I was going to say. On the opposite side, though the actor that played Lyle might not, have such a great relationship with him. I did hear. I saw the interview with Rosie O'Donnell. I think it was on Entertainment Tonight, and she was talking about she goes to the prison to visit him, and he told her about the dog program that they had in prison, and she has an autistic child, and they train dogs to be service animals. And through her friendship with Lyle, she was able to get one of these service animals for her daughter, and she's really advocating for Lyle. Maybe both of them, but I thought it was Lyle. I guess I
I
should
think
look
you're
that
right.
up, but
I think you're right. I'm pretty sure you are right about that. I forgot about that. I forgot that she had, she was advocating for him. But I do remember she said that because of him, they had saved her daughter's life because she was so locked in autism before. And having the dog has really helped her. And that's another program that they're both involved in. Although I think Lyle and Eric are in different programs, but both of them have been very significant in helping rehabilitate people who are in prison. And there's been interviews with several of the prisoners who've known them who've said, hey, these are good guys, and maybe they did some really bad stuff, but they've really changed. So yeah, that's a good point. Thank you for mentioning Rosie.
And with Nicolas Chauvet, the actor who played Lyle, he was also working on General Hospital at the time. So there could have been, he may not have had the opportunity to go like the actor who played Eric. So I think that's also worth mentioning, that just because we haven't heard from him doesn't mean he's not a fan.
I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but Kim Kardashian is advocating for both of them. And in the past, she seemed to have a lot of political power to help get people released that needed to be let out of jail. So I know I've noticed that recently she's been talking about it a lot and, encouraging them to go ahead and speed up their, they did the resentences, which, by the way, they postponed that for 5 times. And supposedly behind the scenes, there's a big political struggle going on in California because the former attorney general wanted to go ahead and give them clemency. And the new one who was elected doesn't even want them to be resentenced. So, it's going to come down to the parole board whether they decide to let them out or not. But ultimately, Governor Newsom can veto it. He can say, no, they can't go out, or yes, let them out. Or if the parole board says, no, you can never go out, he can say, let them out. I'm giving them clemency, which kind of puts the spotlight on him because he has a really, there has been a lot of comment that he wants to run for, he's California governor. He wants to run for president in the next election as a Democrat. So I could see where that would add a big ballywick stuff.
Well, I think that goes back to these poor men have always had some sort of political hatchet hanging over their heads, whether it was the judge or the LA DA saying, "Yeah, we should resentence them. They didn't get a fair shake," and then that guy losing the election, and the new guy coming in, no, they're just using abuse as an excuse.
Yeah. What do you think, Brandon?
The other, yeah, well, yeah. Again, I'm not sure. Whatever the governor's decision is, I I'm sure it will be politically motivated in some way, which should never happen. But um, well, one of the other things I was thinking about was as far as them changing, they were both adolescents technically when they committed the murder. As far as in psychology, adolescents can run through age 25
Yeah.
because the brain is still developing at that time. And now I'm not saying they shouldn't be held responsible, but when you are an adolescent and then become an adult, you do mature and have a different mindset than you
Yeah, you do.
did
They were
have
18 and
gone
21.
through their adulthood. Are they completely different people than they were when they were adolescents?
Well,
I
18 and 21. That's where their ages, right? Ed, Eric
yeah,
was 18 and Lyle was 21. So, I mean, Lyle was barely able to drink alcohol legally and Eric was 18. That's kind of like a baby still, right?
I mean, if people judge me for what I did at 18 or 21, I would not be here. I would be sitting in jail with the Menendez brothers. So, I the jokes and everything aside, like I do think you matured, and I think that's why the judge was wrong to use the adult sentencing rather than the juvenile because there's a reason why California has that laid out.
Which is really weird because California is supposed to be a much more liberal state. For example, in Texas, oh my gosh, if you commit murder, unless you have a really good attorney, they fry you. They stick you in the electric chair. I mean, Texas has one of the highest rates of, executing criminals. There is no leniency in Texas. So, I'm really very careful about everything I do living here. Not that there's much that I would do anymore, but even if there were, I don't even drink and drive. Not that I ever did, but I don't, I would never do that because the penalties here are heinous compared to most states just for drinking one or two drinks. Not that you should drink and drive, but the point being that California is supposed to be a lot more liberal. It's supposed to be a lot more forgiving. They were one of the first states, I think, or at least in the group of states that abolished the death penalty. So, it's confusing to me that they have held these guys in prison for 35 years. I just think that's crazy. They've been in prison longer. Eric's been in prison. Well, both of them have been in prison longer than they have been alive. And I think that is really crazy.
I think part of it
Um,
was the defense didn't really with the appeals they didn't do a good job. They didn't point out that their hands were tied, that they didn't point out how biased the judge was. And I know part of that is legally they have certain steps they can take, but I feel like if they had pushed a little bit more, some of the stuff that happened, at least the resentencing would have happened sooner.
Well, timing too is everything. And like, you know, the reason one of the resentence hearing was postponed was because of the huge fires in LA. that
Yeah.
actually postponed one of the hearings. So I mean, it seems like they've had a lot of bad luck, don't you think? Like just in general, a lot of bad luck about this whole thing.
In
Yeah,
terms
a
of
lot of bad timing.
yeah,
So, was there anything in particular about Monsters, the film, that, was there a point that you thought they should have expanded into further, or do you think they did a pretty good job of covering all the stuff that needed to be shared?
Um, I think they did a pretty good job of um, delving into uh, each perspective. I think they didn't spend a whole lot of time on Kitty and Jose. It seemed like I think there was one episode that where they kind of put them together as and they showed a little bit of their past, each one of them. So maybe, and I don't know, maybe they just didn't have enough. Well, they didn't have enough information because they're dead. But um, I guess a lot of it would be conjecture. And of course, there are a lot of parts in it that were only between Kitty and her husband, or the husband and his a lover, or whatever. And of course, all of that's made up because there's no way they could know those details because they're gone. Nobody can say anything about it. So you have to kind of look at it as this is Hollywood, of course, and they're going to make stuff up. So you've got to keep that in your mind too. But there were a lot of aspects of it that were in public, like showing when the father went out on the tennis court and was yelling at Eric and throwing the tennis racket and things like that. It kind of showed, it's like, okay, yeah, he's not a great guy. But then all the stories that they told, the lies that Lyle told, it makes it really hard to believe or to know the truth. Were Was he making all that up, or was he just not a likable person, and so you don't want to believe him, or you take all the lies that he told, kind of like the boy who cried wolf. If he's gonna tell all these lies about these different things, trying to get people to lie for him, sending out those letters saying, "Hey, tell tell the jury or tell the court that you saw this or that you witnessed this or whatever." You take all that into account, and then you can't believe anything he says. So that was really difficult. But as far as the show, the directing, and everything, I think they did a really good job. Um, as much as they could get out of it, they did.
I really love the Dominic Dune part of it because it kind of opened my eyes to just how much the media played a part in this story and how he had this weird and this it was actually true. I thought it was made up for the show, but no, he was obsessed with Eric being gay, and he would go to these dinner parties and regale the people around him with these stories about things that he believed Eric was doing, and no one ever called him on it. And when he wrote his piece, even his editors kind of just like wrote a blank check and said, "Yeah, here, go publish this," without ever actually doing any fact checking.
That's when he wrote the pieces. Did he do multiple pieces for Vanity Fair or just one?
I think he did just one, but it
But
was really damning.
yeah, but he was considered one of their celebrity writers. I mean, Dominic Dunn was big stuff back then, and he built his whole reputation because he had a daughter who was murdered. And that sort of created him as the guru of true crime. And so that's why he was given carte blanche, don't you think? Why Vanity Fair just turned a blind eye and said, oh, well, you're the king of true crime writing, so whatever you say is probably true, right?
That's I think there's a lot of merit in that, but I also think that I mean hindsight is 2020. We all know that. As we look back on it now, I don't think you could get away with. what he did back then today.
Oh God, no. But why was he so obsessed with the fact that he thought Eric Menendez was gay? What was his problem with? Wasn't Dominic Dunn closet gay?
Yes, and that's exactly why. He viewed Eric as being very attractive, and some people have speculated that maybe there's a little bit of a crush there. And so what he was really talking about was what he fantasized.
But he actually wound up
Kind of a
hurting the
projection.
case, right?
Yeah. Yeah, he ended up.
Hurting the case of Eric. You would think that if he was attracted to him secretly or was fascinated with him, why wouldn't he write stuff to help him? Why would he write stuff to damn him? I don't understand that. Is there something I'm missing?
Yeah, because he was closeted.
Oh,
And so he hated himself, and therefore, anyone who he. Let me back up here. The likelihood is that he hated himself to the point where he would lash out at anyone who he suspected as being gay and enjoying it, or who he felt maybe was proud to be part of the queer community.
but Eric never was
To
never queer, right?
to the best of our knowledge, no.
That Brandon.
I found it interesting in the part where he apologizes to the defense attorney saying, "I believe them." I either that it's true what happened to them, or there that you did some really stellar coaching in getting them on the stand and saying what they said. And I saw that too when they were in the not just in the courtroom, but before in the interview room or whatever, where she was asking him to relate the details of the abuse and everything. You could, I mean, unless he's just a really good actor, you could see that he was sincere, like he was
Yeah.
telling the truth in those moments. And of course, I don't know, he did so many stupid things though. The when they went partying after the murders and talking to that girl who wrote the book, and she recorded all his conversations, and all of that really hurt them a lot.
Well, in fact, I posted a note on Substack. I don't know if it was late last night or early this morning. I lose track of time, but anyway, it was that there is actually a baseball sports card that shows them at a basketball game sitting in the first row, and it was the picture was taken. They just happened to be in the audience, as fans sitting in the very first row, and the card has become very popular with true crime fans because it has a picture of Eric and Lyle in it. And they're like, well, when was this taken? Why were at this game? Well, it happened right after the murders. So a lot of people who were aware of this card said, hey, they weren't that broken up. They went and got, front row seats at a major basketball game in LA. So, how did that happen? So that didn't help them either, and that was years ago that was captured on film. So, did you see that, Ed? That note I
Yeah.
posted about them?
Yeah, I think though with that, a lot of people misconstrue what happened after their parents died. We there's a lot of talk. Well, they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, but that was a drop in the bucket for them. They always spent that money. It was never. It wasn't like, oh, suddenly we have all this money and we're going to go wild. They were raised, to for to have the best and to be the best. So in their mindset, it was not, oh, this is weird. This is making us look guilty. We need to stop. It was, well, this is what mom and dad taught us to do.
Yeah, so if they're used to
That,
driving expensive cars and
Yeah.
wearing expensive clothing and going, if they go to a basketball game, they sit in the front row, that's what they did, right? But
Yeah.
I want to know, do they have any money left if they are released from prison? Do they? Is their fortune gone, or has it been held in escrow? Do you know?
I think it's gone because they had to pay for their defense attorneys.
Because there was a lot of money there when their parents died, because they did inherit everything. Even though they murdered them, they still got the inheritance, right?
Yeah,
But his family, the aunts and uncles who have been going to bat for them, they actually have been paying for a lot of the defense. That's what I understand, right? So they'll probably take care of them. But the house is gone. They have no rights to that house anymore, which is probably good, because if you read about what's happening at that house, I don't think I would want to live there. Have you read about that, Brandon? About all the crowds that go to their house every day? It's become kind of a nightmare, right, Ed?
yeah.
Now, I haven't read about it, but I'm not surprised at all. And if they do get released, I would imagine there will be plenty of book deal offers and other things, and they'll probably do all right.
Isn't there a law in California, though, they can't make any money related to the crime
Um,
of the murder?
I don't know if Son of Sam laws are state by state or federal. Let me see.
Because that might be, but yeah, they're probably going to be huge celebrities. Like you mentioned, Brandon, what's it going to be like for them when they're out on the street after being in prison? Are they going to be mobbed by crowds? And, Lyle is divorced from his second wife, from his second prison wife, but he has supposedly a girlfriend now, right, Ed? He has a new
Y-
girlfriend.
Yeah, they met on Facebook, and I don't know exactly how this happened, but the wife found out about some of their more racy messages, and but the wife is like, okay, yeah, our relationship ran its course, and now it's time for you to move on, and I want to move on as well.
So he's single again? Is Lyle single again?
He has a partner. Um, at least he did last I heard, but they're not like. I don't think they're super like into monogamy at this point.
Okay. I am impressed that Eric's wife has stuck with him for like 25 years or something like that. And they're supposedly still very happy together. But I guess, when and if he gets out of prison, that will be a different story, right?
Uh, to answer the question about the Son of Sam laws, California did have one, but it was struck down.
Oh, so he could do quite well, as Brandon said, with
Yeah,
books and interviews and things like that.
yeah.
So, okay, they'll probably do quite well then.
Yeah, for a while at least, and hopefully they won't do like they did before and just uh, blow it all. 'Cause, you know, like you were saying earlier, they grew up being so spoiled, and well, there was that one time they his dad uh brought Lyle to the car dealership and bought him a car, and Lyle said, "Oh, this is a piece of crap," and it was a 30 some thousand-dollar car, and he was being gifted this car, and he's just calling it, "This is a piece of crap," just like a, you know, I can reach over and touch the passenger door. It just showed how spoiled and entitled they were. So after the parents were murdered, all that shopping spree and everything, it wasn't anything out of the ordinary, really. I mean, they weren't. I don't know if they were really celebrating, but they were just a little bit more uh, unhindered, I guess, without the parents pulling pulling on the reins. So, but it wasn't anything they weren't used to their whole life. They got everything that they wanted.
Yeah, you read about Elon Musk going around handing out $100 bills, for whatever reason, like to get votes or whatever he does. And somebody's like, wow, he's handing out $100 bills. And I said, with the billions of dollars he has, that's like what? Not even a dollar, to the average person. It's more like 10 cents or something. So I guess if they were used to all these, I mean, didn't his father make millions of dollars as a
Yeah.
film producer or music producer? So to them, a $30,000 car probably wasn't any big deal. Like, to anybody else at that time, 35 years ago, $35,000 cars were pretty nice, right? I mean, even now, the way the economy is and everything, if somebody gives you a $35,000 car, hey, don't look a gift horse in the mouth, right?
Yeah.
Please
I
give
know.
it to me.
I know. I know. Why not, right? Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how that. I'm just curious. Do you think that they are going to be released this year, or do you think they'll drag it out?
I think it's going to be dragged out at least until 2026, possibly longer.
And why is that?
I mean, they've already asked for a delay, and then once the decision is made, it has to go through all the process up to and including Governor Newsom. And then only once Governor Newsom signs off, then they can start to say, okay, well, we're going to release you on this date. So I know people are hoping for this year. I'm very skeptical that it's going to be 2025. 2026 maybe early on, but probably no sooner than that.
Yeah, but it just seems like, oh my
When
gosh, let these guys out. If you're going to let them out, don't keep torturing them. I mean, I would be going crazy. I hate when things are postponed. I'm like, let's get on with this. Let's not pussyfoot around. Let's make it happen. Either say, no, you're never getting out, or yeah, we're going to let you out and do it. Why is there all this, agony and, postponement and, ugh, it drives me crazy.
That's kind of how the court system is, though. I
Yeah.
mean, they drag everything out, no matter what it is. They drag it out. But when was the sentence changed? Was it
This
very
month,
recently?
like the 15th, wasn't it, Ed? May
Yeah,
15th?
it's been about a week and a half now.
Yeah. But they were
Well,
supposed
that's
to
the other
be
reason I think
resentenced last summer, right? Go ahead. Go ahead, Brandon.
that's the other reason I think it probably won't be this year because it's so fresh in everyone's mind. Everyone's going to be watching it and waiting and everything. And I think that's sort of political too. They're like, okay, let's let this die down a little bit before we make a decision. Maybe, I don't know.
Brandon, how you said, give me the car. If you don't want the $30,000 piece of crap, give it to me. Well, I think it's very interesting that after Monsters came out, both brothers spoke harshly about it. They were very critical of it, and they said that it wasn't a fair, assessment of their situation, and that it was lies. And the guy who the producer said, I did them a favor because I highlighted the situation and brought it back into the public eye. So in a sense, that reminded me of, here he's getting a free car, a $30,000 quote piece of crap. But here's this, this Hollywood producer that put a lot of time and money and effort into producing Monsters, and now they're criticizing it, the two brothers, even though ultimately it's probably going to result in them getting out of jail. So that kind of reminded me of, looking a gift horse in the mouth. I just thought that was, maybe they didn't like it, but I'm not sure they should have been lambasting it. Did you see where they were criticizing
Well,
it,
kind of
Ed?
like
Go ahead, Brandon. Sorry.
I was, I was going to say, is it kind of like the saying, no press is bad press,
That's true.
all press is good press? How's that go?
There's no such thing as bad publicity.
Yeah, well, that's
Yeah,
that's
there
what
we
I
go.
said. Yeah. So maybe they were doing it, I thought they were acting a little bratty, but maybe they were just trying to keep it in the public eye, because they were getting huge features on TikTok. My gosh, didn't it trend on TikTok for a while, Ed?
Yeah.
You go to TikTok too, Brandon? Are you on TikTok?
I haven't like there was a while that I was going on TikTok quite a bit, but I was like, you know what, I need to calm this down. I still go on there every once in a while, but and I sometimes take pieces of my articles and make them into uh, audio like video type things and put them on TikTok. They don't get a lot of attention on there because of everything else they're competing with, but anyway, yeah, every once sometimes I go on TikTok, but not as much as I used to.
with the show, I think a lot of people at first missed that they were doing different perspectives, and so there was a lot of outcry even from the hardcore Menendez fans, like, "How could you put this show out? This is not accurate, this is not." And then once people started, like, because I figured it out probably 3 or 4 episodes in, I think once people started figuring it out, they're like, "Oh." And I don't think it ever, I think Monsters helped surge it back into the spotlight. I don't know that it really did much in terms of getting the wheels moving in the court system. I think that was very much already in the works, and it just happened to coincide with Monsters coming out.
Wow. Well, I do know that there was huge, like, there was crowds that were gathering around the Menendez brothers mansion. And
Yeah.
supposedly that started with TikTok, where people were putting up signs on TikTok visiting the mansion and let the Menendez brothers out. And there was a big outcry that started from TikTok. So maybe it was coincidental, because I do know his family, the Eric Menendez, well, the whole family, the Menendez brothers family, the aunts and the cousins, they have been campaigning to get them out, what, for 10 years?
Yeah, for a very long time.
So it could have been just, like you said, it just happened by coincidence, but it did seem to help push it forward, because it brought a lot more attention to average people. Like, I'm not on TikTok very much. I might go there every once in a while if something gets my attention. But like you, Brandon, I find that unless you're doing something really crazy, like a Robin Wilding kind of crazy, like, dating a monkey, or, swinging from a tree, eating bananas naked or something like that. I don't know. I can't even begin to think what you would do. But, unless you're doing
Karen,
something like that,
I
you,
told you
you
my Saturday night plans in confidence.
Yes, I'm sorry, Ed. I'm sorry. But, unless you're doing something like that, you really don't get a lot of traction on TikTok.
Yeah.
So, but every once in a while will catch my attention, especially if it's a true crime related thing. I do have a friend who will send me links all the time about the craziest true crime things that he finds on TikTok. Even they don't get a lot of traction, they just really don't. And I noticed that Sam is here. Hi, Sam. I'm so glad she's here. She has a really, like Ed said, she has a really good way of digging down into the psyche of the killers and finding these little nuggets of what might make them tick and what may have motivated them. And she really did a great job on the Menendez brothers piece, where the three of us each took a different perspective of the key players. And I do think it would be good to do either a prequel on Kitty and Jose, and not necessarily with the brothers in it, because there was a lot of questions I had about Kitty. I mean, we hear a lot of brushstrokes about her and how she didn't want to have children and how she wanted to be a famous actress and how she married this man who abused her and cheated on her. But I would love to know more about her backstory. And there's just not really that much out there. There's some, but I'd really like somebody to do a deep dive on that. And more on Jose, because what explained his intense cruelty to his own children? There had to be something in his background, don't you think?
Well, I think with Jose, it was much like Dominic Dune, where he was some variation of queer, whether it was bisexual or pan or something, but his culture and his line of work would not allow him to come out, and he wanted to instill that into his boys.
Well, he was Cuban, and they
Yeah,
definitely have a strong anti queer,
yeah,
culture. I don't know how it is now, but it used to,
Right.
when he was growing up, it was very intense. And it's a very Catholic country. I don't know
yeah.
if it still is, but those kind of countries, Latin America, are Latin based countries that are strong Catholic or strong religious. They're very anti queer,
Yeah.
very anti, So that makes a lot of sense on his part. Mr. Ed, we are at our top of the hour, and I have really enjoyed having Brandon with
Yes.
us today. You have brought in so many great new ideas. Yes, you are amazing. Now, Ed always does the wrap up, so I'm going to zip my lip and let him finish. And thank you to all who've joined us and watched and provided us with great comments.
Well, thank you, Brandon, for joining us. Why don't you tell us your pub so we can all subscribe?
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Brandon Ellrich is so gay.
I love that. I love that. Yes, please, everybody, go check it out. It's really very good, and I go all the time, and I restack it whenever I get. But yeah, it's delightful.
Yeah.
Anything else, Ed? You want to add?
No, thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Brandon, for co-hosting with us today.
We
We'll be
loved
back.
having you.
Yeah.
Thank
Karen
you
and I
very
will be
much.
back next.
I enjoyed it.
Yes, please come back.
Yeah.
If you have a particular true crime case that you really want to talk about, we would love to do that. And anybody watching, we are always open. Ed and I, we like to get on here and argue. We don't kill each other because obviously we're still breathing, but we do like to bring in, like we had Sam on here, and now you've been on here, and there's a couple other people we would love to join us because you always benefit from having different perspectives.
Next week we'll be back with another case, maybe, if Karen doesn't kill me. All right. Thank you everyone for watching, and thank you for everyone who will be watching when we post the videos.
Thank you all. Bye, Brandon. Have a lovely weekend, everybody.
Thanks. Thanks, you too.